Kalen DeBoer, head coach of Washington, up and out, down to Tuscaloosa, and the new head coach, the 28th head coach in the history of the Alabama Crimson Tide football team, Kalen DeBoer. DeBoer, there's a lot that could be said about this hire. I think for sure it's way too early to talk about Kalen DeBoer going to Alabama as a good hire, as a bad hire, right fit, wrong fit. It's way too early. It's going to be too early until about the end of his second season as head coach. Expectations for next year, as disparaging as it may be for Alabama fans, including myself, it's going to be 2 losses, maybe 3 losses. Good news, that's not the end of the world because there's a 12-team playoff, so we can eventually find our way into the playoff with 2 or 3 losses, considering a lot of different circumstances, the entire spectrum of the world of college football. So expectations for year 1, 2 losses, maybe 3 losses. That's okay. That might be right in the mix for the college football playoff. But by the end of year 2, after he's been able to build an entire year, almost 2 years under his belt in terms of recruiting, in terms of the transfer portal, in terms of junior college guys, bringing in the right coaches, developing relationships, learning the ins and outs of the program and the city and everything about it, is going to take a little bit of time. It's always taken any good head coach a little bit of time. And it's extremely rare for any head coach to come into any program and make an immediate smash mouth impact in their first year. However, if anybody can do it with any program, it's going to be Kalen DeBoer, and it's going to be at Alabama. He's got the right makeup. He's got the right mental approach to this entire thing, bringing over a ton of members of his staff that he's had success with in Washington to a program and to a facility and to a culture that's already been built up to such a high level that the floor for Kalen DeBoer by year 2 at Alabama should be 1 or 2 losses, absolute max, but probably 1 loss, could be a fluke loss. That's the bottom line. That's the floor. That's the basement expectation by year 2 for Kalen DeBoer, based on what I've seen and what I've collected from him in his sound bites, in his interviews, in his press conferences, the way he carries himself, the way he went about making this decision, how he's bringing guys over, the transfer portal. Baseline expectation of year 2 is 1 loss or undefeated. Top of the line expectation is Alabama is scoring anywhere from 35 to 45 points a game, undefeated and national champions. Legitimately, that's the expectation. And that's not like, oh, I'm demanding these things. That's not like coming from a place of, that's the expectation at Alabama. No. That's what I expect to happen based on what I've seen. That's what I expect to happen. It's going to be impossible to say, oh, this is a good hire. Oh, this is a bad hire. Even after, during, or after the first year, there's been so many guys that have already entered the transfer portal for Alabama that are going to come in from the transfer portal at other schools. It's going to be almost an entirely new program next year, minus a handful of pieces. Jalen Milroe, the quarterback, said he's going to stay. That's great. Happy about that as an Alabama fan. That's a main piece, a big piece of the team that's going to be the same is your quarterback. Offensive coordinator, different. Defensive coordinator, different. Head coach, different. Defensive secondary, different. Defensive line, different. You guys got guys going to the draft. Wide receiving core is going to be entirely brand new. You've got Jermaine Burton out of eligibility and done and gone and going to the NFL or whatever at wide receiver. Isaiah Bond, the recipient of the 4th down and 31 play from Alabama at Auburn to, catch the touchdown and give Alabama the lead in that Iron Bowl game. Historic, crazy, awesome play. Isaiah Bond transferred. So point being, it's going to be a whole new team. And it's going to be, you can't judge the job that Kalen DeBoer is going to do at Alabama during or after his first year as the head coach. It's going to be impossible to say, oh, at the end of the year, next season, if they have 2 losses, maybe they have 3 losses, maybe they're undefeated, maybe they're not undefeated. I don't know. But it took Kalen DeBoer a little bit of time and Washington to build it up. And it's going to take him a little bit of time in Alabama to build up the program that he wants it to be. It's going to be impossible to judge the job that he's done after 3 months going through the transfer portal and then few games. Because there's an opportunity, there's a chance Alabama, with their schedule, they've got to play Georgia early on. They have a handful of really tough SEC road games that they have to deal with at Tennessee, at LSU. There's a chance they walk out of their schedule with 3 losses. And everyone's going to say, this is a failed hire. DeBoer's not the right guy. He's an idiot. He has no idea what he's doing. We should have never hired. No. That should not be the case for a guy like Kalen DeBoer with a proven track record and in a situation where it's his first year. It's his first year as a head coach in the SEC. But it's very newsworthy. Nonetheless, Kalen DeBoer, head coach at Alabama. My expectations for him going forward are that he's going to shoot for the stars. He's going to go high in terms of things like recruiting, in terms of things like expectations of offensive production and resources that he's going to provide for the players. You've got, he's going to bring in offensive line coaches, defensive line coaches, receiver coaches, offensive coordinators, quarterback coach. Like, he's going to bring in everybody, all the resources that are necessary. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited for it. Certainly, a different personality, I think, is the main thing to recognize in a situation with Kalen DeBoer going to Alabama. It's a different personality. From everything I've seen, the way Kalen DeBoer carries and handles himself, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. It's just different. It's different from the intensity of Nick Saban. It's different from, the fast-paced, quick talk, movement, blah, 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 from Kirby Smart. It's different from the Lane Kiffin, let it fly. I don't give a, about anybody or anything. I'm going to let it rip. Who cares what anybody thinks about me? Like, it's just different. It's different from anything that's ever been affiliated with Nick Saban or his coaching tree or anything involved with that. It's a little bit more reserved. It's a little bit quieter. It's a little bit slower paced, not in a bad way, but it's player driven. It's smooth. It's kind of just the difference. And there's different ways to get to the same point. There's different ways for success. The way I see it with Alabama previously, with Nick Saban, with guys like Kirby Smart as the defensive coordinator, with Lane Kiffin at offensive coordinator, Steve Sarkisian offense, it's kind of like boom, smash, like big boy, run it up the middle, let it rip, speed, fast. Like with Kalen DeBoer, the best way I could describe Kalen DeBoer and his approach and how he's gone about handling his business is slow is smooth, smooth is fast, where the way he talks is very deliberate. He puts a lot of thought and effort into all of his actions. He's a little bit more reserved. He's a little bit more soft-spoken. He's not going to scream and yell and get in a guy's face probably anywhere near as much as the previous guys, as the other guys that he's going to be facing off against in the SEC. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. And it's going to be impossible to judge Kalen DeBoer and the job that he's done at Alabama unless you give him 2 full years to run the program exactly how he'd like to and have everything under control, bring in the right guys, bring in the right players, recruit the right people, and then we'll see where he's at after the 2025 season. There's not back-to-back Final Four or potentially a national championship mixed into that in the next 2 years. I would be a little bit surprised based on the body of work from Kalen DeBoer. I mean, the guy's done nothing but win everywhere he's gone. So that's the expectation. That's the hope, and we'll see where it goes.